Welcome. It's our third panel of London Fashion Week, and what a designer to be talking about. We're going to be discussing Christopher Kane. I also have an amazing panel with me, but I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Salter. I'm fashion news editor at ID, and I'm a menswear blogger as well.
Hello, my name is Cobbie Yates, and I'm a London-based stylist.
Good morning, I'm Chodha, and I'm a fashion writer.
Hello, I'm Tui, I'm a fashion editor at Pop magazine.
So it's been a massive year for Christopher Kane. Obviously earlier this year he got Kering acquired 51% of his brand, and then it's been a massive day for Christopher Kane because not only does he have his show, he's also just announced that he's opening his first flagship store, and it's going to be on Mount Street. So there's a lot for us to discuss, which is nice because it makes my job easy. But Dal, what did you think of that investment? Let's start with you.
I think it's very exciting. Surprised it I think it puts everything else, all the other hype that lots of other designers get, into context actually, because someone like Christopher Kane, who's been, doing this for quite a while, how it's taken that long for him to grow it to a point where a big company like that is seriously, looking at investing in him, especially with the rumours right now of the LVMH JW Anderson thing. I find it quite fascinating that I think it took so long. So it really does, for me, put everything else, all those other rumours and the rumour mill that's grinding around other designers into context. And it's really exciting. I think it's giving everyone this kind of renewed hope in London, and everyone's taking it seriously.
It's interesting you say that because there seems to be kind of two things. As much as you say, it contextualises the buzz because it took him so long to get that investment, it also does give people hope. But do you think it's making designers feel a bit like, God, how long am I going to have to slog it out on my own before I get some...
Yeah, and I'd hope that would edit out some of the weaker designers, really, to be honest. I would hope that rather than putting off great talent, it would just sort of let us now, or it really throws the spotlight on those people that are serious contenders on a kind of big scale. But that doesn't mean to say that all designers showing at London Fashion Week need to be huge brands and have luxury stores in Mayfair. But I think it will kind of put off potentially those ones that are just doing it because they're just on a hamster wheel that they've not managed to jump off yet.
Would you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah, I think it sets a benchmark. I mean, with all the kind of sponsorship programs in place, there's a conveyor belt and there's like a hamster wheel type thing. They go through a certain section like Fashion East, and they go on to New Gen and various other kind of awards. And Christopher Kane has done all of those things, and he has been our great hope for a long period of time. So it's great that he's actually finally realised that, and he has set that benchmark that others can follow. Yeah, I think it's a hugely positive thing. I think everyone will take note. The likes of JW Anderson and Simone Rocha, who are further along down the line behind him, can see that, and that's what they're going to be striving for. And I think for London that's exciting because it's always been one of the place where everyone thinks, oh, so much creativity exists there, it's fabulous, but no one's actually making any money. So it's great that someone like Christopher Kane, with the backing, will be able to do that. So I think it's hugely exciting.
We've mentioned some of the contenders. We mentioned obviously there were all these LVMH, JW Anderson rumours, and you threw out Simone's name there as someone else who we could see getting to a point where she is sort of picked up by a big investor. I don't know, who else do you guys think might be other names that you can imagine going the whole way, if we can put it like that? Who would you say to?
I think there are quieter brands. Oh, sorry.
Or Steve, what
I think in general in London, there's a lot of young designers, and they're all sort of, they're sort of from my generation. There's not that many. I think JW is probably sort of the most obvious one. Simone Rocha, definitely, she's a strong contender. I'm really into Marcus Almeida. They're still quite young. There's still a lot of, for them, a lot of space for them to grow. But I sort of like to see them sort of, move a bit further from what they're doing now, really.
I think Marcus Almeida is a good one because they kind of satisfy different kind of niche as well, because you can talk about JW and Simone, they're all kind of competing on a similar kind of client, I think. I would add probably Jonathan Saunders to that list. I think his show last night was probably one of my favourites so far for London Fashion Week, and maybe Richard Nicol as well, into that mix. But I would still think Kane, JW Anderson, Simone are probably the ones with the strongest, the most exciting identity, I think.
Working at magazines like Pop and ID, how do you think that Christopher Kane's managed to become sort of such a success commercially and in a retail context, but also stay sort of really cool with the young style mags? There's all young fashion kids still love Christopher Kane, whereas I don't think young fashion kids love Jonathan Saunders. It's kind of that thing of being very commercial but keeping cool. How has he managed to do that?
I think a lot, sort of keeping it quite exclusive in a way. They don't lend samples out to everyone. You don't see it everywhere. It's not oversaturated. You see it at the right places, and they've got the right people behind them as well, which I think is hugely important. And timing really as well.
Yeah, he's done everything on his own terms. I think that's what we talked before we went live, that he still hasn't got a website, which confuses and confuzzles everyone on this panel.
Is that a good thing that he doesn't have a website? Because people talk about it like it's this cute little thing about him, like, oh, he doesn't have a website, but is that not a bit stupid? Like, wouldn't we like to see him have a website?
It almost raises the expectations when he does launch one. Obviously he's launching a store on Mount Street now, and that sets that retail bar high. He's got to do something similar online. I think I think it works hand in hand with your question about whether you think it's a good idea to have all of these different things in place, but it's just about really having a good business structure, and I think that's one thing that he kind of has in place. Like you said, working with the right people. He's had the right people behind him from the beginning, working so closely with Justine at Relative, and just really kind of cultivating his brand with the right sort of people, getting in with the right timing.
He does it in quite an antiquated fashion way. It's done with his sister Tammy. It's quite a kind of sweet fashion story. It's a kind of Italian. It's all in the house, kind of quite all in the family.
When we were talking about Alexander Wang in our last panel, it follows that sort of same suit of it keeping the structure really solid and really controlling a business, and I think that's one thing that he kind of flies the flag for, I guess.
Well, Tu talked about timing as well. I think that's really key from when he started. What fashion, or the fashion industry that he was first introduced into then, is very different to the ones that are being introduced now with the likes of the J.W. Ansons, Simone Roches, and even newer designers or more recent graduates as well. So it is, I think he's of slightly that older ilk, with his collection being bought by Browns in the way that Galliano's was. I don't know the last graduate collection that was sold in a shop like Browns like that, with that sort of level of we just want it straight away. So it had that buzz around it, and really that, I think, there's a lot that Browns and Joan Bernstein we have to be thankful for pushing it this way, in the same way with Galliano. So I think that is with timing. I don't know whether that happens the same way anymore, because there are so many stores. Designers have their own options to selling collections. They can almost cut out shops now, or I think they feel like they can, so they can almost just sell directly through their own sites, which Chris hasn't done and isn't doing and might do, which again, that exclusivity thing, I think it makes it feel slightly detached from just these relentless shows that are going on. It kind of feels a little bit more broken away from all of those things, and I think that's probably something that's kept it relevant and exciting for everyone.
And I think as well the fact that he doesn't have a website, he doesn't have Twitter, he doesn't have Instagram. It's very mysterious. You don't really know what he's doing. And I think sort of keeping that exclusivity, I think, and that mystery as well. I think that's sort of people they want to know what's going on, but I think it keeps it quite exclusive that way.
I'm really interested in what you guys both said though, because it feels like he's a symbol of the changing nature of what it takes to be a really successful designer, because you mentioned kind of Browns bought his collection. He is that little bit ahead of Jonathan Anderson, and if you compare the two and the way that Jonathan said about building his brand in a very aggressive way, he once said to me when I was interviewing him, I'll do an interview with anyone that asks me to. He really put himself out there.
That's not true anymore.
Not true anymore, but at the start that's kind of what he did. He was put himself out there. He's on Twitter, he's very sort of pro digital, he's really doing stuff online, and it's very different to what we've seen from someone like Christopher Kane. I wonder if he is a symbol of sort of the changing nature of what it takes to sort of get yourself out there, because I wonder if a designer could be like, I'm not going to have Twitter today if they started.
I think it's quite nice that someone like Christopher Kane has shown that you don't have to shout. There's kind of like a soft power type role that he's kind of.
But could you still do that now, do you think?
I think you can. I mean, he's doing that now. I don't think you have to, there's no... I think even when, Christopher Kane's, we've only been talking about him for, a few years, with the rise of digital, he could have easily have embraced digital and ran with it like so many other designers have done, but he hasn't. But yeah, he still managed to make it a success. So, yeah, I think it's refreshing that, he's doing it in a quieter fashion.
It throws out a kind of... This could be a huge discussion, so let's try and condense it. But what's the point of digital thing? There was a really brilliant article on Mashable about a week ago by Rachel Arthur, and she talked about what's the point of live streaming? Does it actually make any difference to brand? And it does kind of throw out this idea of, and there was a really good piece on, I think it was also on Mashable, about how many sales are actually made via social media. So do any luxury brands actually get people buying stuff as a result of their Twitter or Facebook. And it does kind of throw out this idea of, is this something we all do because we think we have to, but really it's not making a difference to luxury brands. I think that's quite an interesting thing, that he's kind of opened up a lot of questions.
No, definitely. I think, everyone, most, excluding Christopher Kane, everyone is embracing digital, but they're not sure, they haven't worked out exactly how to do it. There are a few success stories, but there are so many times where you think, why are they doing that? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, it doesn't add anything to the experience. Who are the success stories
of digital? Like Henry Holland perhaps would be good. Who would you guys look at and be like, okay, they're getting it right, they're doing it right? In terms
of strategy, and they always get applauded for it, is Burberry in terms of the luxury side.
But they've just thrown money at it. Is there anyone that's doing anything clever?
Well,
that was really
clever on the cheap. That's
I think the whole thing is so new still, so people are still trying to work out the magic formula, and no one has really nailed it. So I guess it's, we're still sort of in the middle of it, and we're still trying to figure out.
I guess Topshop, when Justin was there, got close with the Google Hangouts and the Google Plus, but I think this time they're doing it with Chirp, which well, as soon as I read that, I thought, oh, okay, you are just literally, you're treating the digital technologies like trends as well. Where stripes are in, we're doing the 60s, let's use this social networking site this season. And I think that's quite a shame, because all of those people that would have joined Google Plus to hang out with Cara Delevingne, for whatever reason, online, have now got Google Plus accounts that kind of don't really mean anything, because now they're going to have to, I don't even know what Chirp is, but the fact that it would seem so throwaway. So I think if Topshop had carried on using Google Plus and really built it and respect the technology that they're starting to use, whereas that kind of suggested to me that people or brands are viewing technology in a quite disposable way. It's kind of like, let's just do the new thing, let's do the new thing. And I think that's why Burberry's been successful, because they've adopted the traditional platforms but just pushed what they're doing with them. And it may not be the most innovative with what they're doing, but actually they've done everything they can do on Instagram, on Twitter, with apps so far. And I think that's where it comes in, whereas when brands just kind of go, let's just do the latest digital thing.
Yeah, I think Philip Lim have done quite a good job with their online sort of strategy. I was looking at some of their films the other day from the show, and the way that it's filmed is just like mind-blowing. Obviously, when we do talk about digital, one of the pioneers for me would obviously be McQueen, and always will be, kind of thing. But Wang did a great job as well. But yeah, I just think that no one young, back to your question, is really kind of doing it on the cheap in a kind of clever, fun way. Like Wang's done a couple of things with social media, and he had like a fake sample sale organised a few weeks ago, and it was like a prank, and it was almost a part of his campaign. Everyone was like running around grabbing stuff, and it was hilarious, but like at the same time it was genius, because it was getting so much hype around his brand. I think that would be the only example of.
When you say doing it on the cheap, someone young, I do think Henry Holland is an interesting example of that, because he does it. He obviously doesn't do all of it himself, but it is kind of on the cheap. It's just him with a really funny Twitter account and him with a really funny Instagram. He's not sort of hurling money at producing amazing viral films and that kind of thing. But I think that is quite an interesting.
But the difficulty is that when someone like a designer or a character like Henry Holland starts off by being famous and then making clothes, or they kind of happen at the same time, is that now he has a frustration, or will have a frustration, that more people were talking about Harry Styles than they were about the clothes. And I think I know that is a frustration that is there now, because it's kind of like, yes, okay, there are these people at the front row, but don't forget what I've just spent 6 months doing that was on the front. And I think even someone like that, it's very interesting to see frustrations coming from that angle, that almost, and maybe that bubble is bursting as well, that sort of the overhype, which kind of brings it back to Christopher.
Personality push, almost. It's like more about,
But and Christopher Shannon as well, like his Twitter account isn't a work Twitter account, it's not a professional one, but people follow him because he's very funny, and it's as simple as that, and he makes great clothes. They're almost two separate things, but they don't necessarily need to be this really glossy, official Twitter accounts and things like that. And I think I would find it a bit weird if Christopher Kane was on Twitter. I don't really know what it would be. I'm guessing it's going to be, it will happen, and it will probably be a very
glossy brand.
A very caring sort of LVMH style thing, but that's a shame.
Let's talk Mount Street. Are you excited to go shopping at Christopher Kane's flagship store when it opens?
I can't wait. I mean, I read somewhere he was saying how he was frustrated about a lot of the buyers. They didn't buy the showpieces, things like that. And I think the fact that he's getting his own store, he can actually create it in the way that he wants it to be. The pieces that, Browns didn't buy, he's going to stock in his store. I think that's going to be really interesting, and sort of just see all these pieces, you can touch them, you can feel them. I think it's hugely exciting.
It was interesting that you say, the pieces that buyers don't buy, and he's talked about the frustration, because the press release they put out about the store did say that he's really excited to put across his vision in the store, and I always wonder if that's going to be his version of Instagram and Twitter. This is Christopher Kane, he's going to have his showpieces, he's going to make it a real way to sort of, not just be the commercial collection, it's going to be a real sort of
his sort of universe.
Exactly, yeah. What does this say about Mount Street? Because what I find really exciting about this is Mount Street is now the place in London, and that's kind of crept up, I think, in a way. People have been like, oh, Mount Street for a while, but now Marc Jacobs, Christopher Kane opening there. Is this kind of the coolest place in London now?
It's really understated, isn't it, still, even though it's in the middle of Mayfair. Not many people know about it. People don't really go here to shop. And I think it's really clever, really, because it's sort of, again, it keeps that sort of mystery, and not sort of selling out in a way. Definitely.
There are almost those different types of luxury consumers now, and I think the Bond Street, Sloane Street luxury consumer is not the Mount Street one, and that's what's quite nice. The collection of shops they've got there, from starting with Rick Owens and Balenciaga and Marc, and the following ones, I think is really exciting, because it's almost quite separate to those things. It's very understated, and it is difficult for people to stumble upon just very naturally, unless they're
kind
staying
in the know vibe
at the hotels around there. So it feels like a little sort of neighbourhoody thing. If you're staying at those hotels, you'll shop there.
Yeah, I think it's like a new interpretation of what heritage is for this sort of generation, or generations to come, because obviously it does have a massive sort of heritage to the area, but the brands that are setting up there and that are being kind of, that are basing themselves there are representing, what we see or what our new generation sees as being luxury, fine luxury. And I think that's, for me, the most exciting thing, because it's not necessarily where, an 18-year-old's going to go to shop. It still is very much so out of certain people's price bracket, but I like that, you know where you need to go if you want that sort of brands, or if you want that sort of luxury. And it's exciting. Really.
I don't think it feels like luxury in a traditional. It doesn't feel like Sloane Street, as you say. It feels kind of cool. I think that's what.
People, I think, going to the point you made, I think people will actually go there, and maybe they can't afford it, but they'll try and go and be inspired. We used to do a Dover Street Market kind of thing, but we'll go to Mount Street now to kind of to be and to be like some design students.
I'll still go.
I was just there yesterday to be inspired, but it'd be nice to go somewhere else as well. And do we know when it's actually launching now? That's the
it's
thing.
in 2014, so pretty soon.
Is that going to be before or after Celine? The Celine store that's been
Celine's
talked about for many.
Celine's opening really soon, isn't it?
Is it?
It's been boarded up for a very long time. I don't know what's
Let's go look afterwards. Let's go on a shopping trip. And what's the significance of him opening in London? Was that always going to happen? Was it always going to be London that he'd open his first store in, or do you think that's...
I think the fact that he's still based in Dalston, he's very much a London designer, and I think, that's sort of the obvious choice. I'd like to see him sort of, move on to New York and to Paris and all that, but I think London's a good start.
I think as consumers, I think we probably get him the most as well. I think in London makes sense.
I don't know how many stockists does he have in London.
I actually don't know how many he's got. He's got Browns. He's got Net-a-Porter.
He's got Matches. Dover Street. Most important ones, really.
Yeah.
And that he has Lane Crawford in Japan, Tokyo, and all that sort of thing. So.
But it makes sense to open it in London. I don't think it's kind of a surprise to anyone.
Yeah.
It would have been if it wasn't London.
Yeah, it would have been a shame.
But the fact that it is great.
Yeah. I want to look at the collection, but just before we go, let's talk a little bit about his aesthetic, because we talked a lot about the business side of his brand. Kering, damn them, they've made us focus on that. But let's talk about what are the Christopher Kane codes? I hate that word, but what do we know him for? What are we expecting to see?
Why do you hate that word?
Codes, I don't know, it just feels really ooh.
Scientific.
Yeah, it's just kind of French and this. And it's just, I think
there's
it's
a list somewhere stuck up in the studio.
Yeah. What do we expect from Christopher Kane? What do we know him for?
Well, like an obsession with nature and the world around him, really. That's how I always see him. And he always kind of manages to kind of imagine it in his own way, whether it's jellyfish or anything else, or flowers or florals or anything like that. Yeah, he kind of looks to nature and I don't know, makes me see it in a kind of almost a technological way. I think that's, yeah, he has that kind of strange duality. He dances between nature and technology really well, I think.
The mad scientist.
He really is, yeah.
What would you say his codes are? What do you go to him for? Is it a lovely cocktail dress? What's the kind of?
I think there's always something a bit off about his collection, and you look at it at first, you're a bit like, but then you look again with fresh eyes, you're like, actually, it's really amazing, and you know, I think it's, you know, it's always quite sexy, but then it's off at the same time, and it's never that obvious, I think.
Do you think he's redefined ideas of femininity? Because I was looking back at some of his older collections, and I thought about that a lot, about what we see some of the younger designers, Jonathan, Simone, doing, and how Christopher Kane, he's always actually done shapes that are relatively conservative. He does a lot of dresses, so you could see it as being quite sort of traditional in its view of femininity, but I think he has moved ideas of what is feminine, what's sexy along a lot in a way that has kind of very quietly influenced fashion, whether it's just higher necklines or longer dresses. I don't know, would you guys?
Yeah, from his first collections, I don't know whether it's kind of just generally him growing up as well. I think it's the polar opposite to what's now in terms of his vision of women and femininity. But I've read before, and I think it's true, that because he works so closely with Tammy, a woman, which lots of the designers don't, or have that relationship so closely with designers, men that make women's clothes, it really does play out in this, and I think she tries everything on, and it really has it feels like there's a woman's sensibility here, as well as that kind of technical, maybe stereotypically male obsession with detail and, you know, application and science, as Steve was saying, and all that stuff. So it's a really nice marriage of the two. But yeah, I like the fact that it's quite feminine, but it still has traditional elements of femininity. It's not like all the new set to a kind of aggressively pushing out chunky flat shoes and, you know, kind of saying that you don't have to have a waist in my clothes. I think it's quite nice that Christopher's still got, you know, there's still a woman shape there, which I know isn't a very fashionable thing to say in terms of gender politics. If you think his shop as an older woman,
you know, we always talk about designers as if it's like a 20-year-old girl wearing them, but if you think who actually buys Christopher Kane, they want something that's got a waist, and they don't want to be wearing some big sack, you know. And I think that lots of the designers, I always look at them and think, you've kind of forgotten that there needs to be a body underneath this that isn't, you know, a model's body. It's such an old, boring argument to even raise, but I think Christopher definitely understands that these clothes are going to be filled out by someone. Yeah, I think it walks the line between fashion and clothes very well. It always has a fashion statement to make, but then it doesn't feel like it feels like it's for a person. It's got a life off the catwalk.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see it on you can imagine it on many different people as well. I don't think it's very like, this is the, talk about codes, I don't think this is the Christopher Kane woman. I don't think there is one particular one.
It's really interesting, because a lot of what you're saying ties exactly to what we said about the Mary Katranzu collection yesterday. I think that's what, you know, you said a really nice phrase where you said his clothes make you want to look again, and it feels like the people that are doing really well in London are the ones that bear in mind that there's a woman that's going to wear it, but they also give you that little something extra when you go and try on their clothes. There's something else for you to see, and it feels like that's the people are getting it right, managed to sort of balance that.
Well, there's that thing, I think Eva Wiseman wrote it in The Gentlewoman, the new issue, about wearing one earring, and the reason partly you wear it because you look back at someone wearing one earring because you think, has she lost it, is she nuts, is she making a statement? And it's that with these collections that you glance back, and you will go back. There are so many designers' collections that you don't need to look at again once you've seen the show. Professionally, obviously, we all have to, but generally you probably don't want to. But Christopher's definitely one that you think, actually, I need to see this again, I need to be able to understand it better.
Should we see what he's done for Spring Summer 14 then? This is metal, which is quite hard for us to see on the screen, but
what, like plating or something?
Yeah.
Around the pockets.
And little peepholes. And this goes to what you were saying, Steve, about nature, because that echoes, you know, the flowers that he's done before, those kind of petal shapes.
Petals falling.
It's almost like a paisley though as well, isn't it?
I'm seeing a tear there as well. Maybe it's me. Me being damp yesterday, it's like a tear or a raindrop, but definitely it's grounded in nature, definitely. And again, with the metal, it's that kind of that balance, that marriage between nature and technology.
One thing that's nice, it always feels like he's unpicking his own heritage a little bit. You know, like we always associate Christopher Kane with kind of purpley, moody colours. We always associate him with flowers, and I feel like he's got to a point now where he's kind of unpicking and playing with his own archive in a really nice way. Like that reminds me of the Princess Margaret collection he did, you know.
It's lace.
It's not very summery, this collection, though.
It's icy, isn't it?
Yeah, icy.
I just think designers have just completely forgotten about seasons these days.
I love that though. It's so much better.
Yeah.
They're probably confused with all the resort collections they have to do. They're not sure what they're designing for anymore.
When are we going to get to a point though where we stop having autumn, winter, spring? When are we just going to have
continuous drops?
Yeah, someone just make like a liar and show when you want to show.
Yeah.
God, think how confusing that would be for our panels though.
Yeah, exactly.
Nightmare. Let's not
Constantly on call. Ring the, sound the alarm and we'll all come running.
What's your take on this too from what you've seen so far?
It seems a lot more conservative in a way. I think with the suits and everything, it's more grown up compared to what's been in the past, I think.
I think he always considers his older consumer, to be honest with you. I just think that maybe it's just the first part. I don't know, I'm interested to see if he has gone back to kind of his sportswear elements, you know, where he does like the sort of the jogger pant or like a sweatshirt or something like that.
It feels grown up in this. It's still got that wit and that subversive thing that he does so well. You know, that
the shoes look fun.
Yeah, the shoes are fun. The cutouts, you know, the peepholes. It's quite British and that kind of. It's not cheeky. Sounds very sort of flippant, but I think there's always got kind of there's an intelligent wit to it. That took me ages to explain. But.
Yeah. But I think he manages to be like he pushes boundaries, but he never really shocks. I think that's what he does really well, and I can see it in these first like 10 looks.
I think it kind of gets under your skin. It's what Dal was saying. You want to go back and see it more.
And not just see it, you want to go in there and touch it and look at the fabrics, because he always uses such amazing fabrics.
One thing I really like about him, and we've talked about this on panels before, is how he's really not afraid to be incredibly repetitive in his collections. You know, like when he did the bubble collection, like all the jelly, it was literally the same look the whole time, but it never feels repetitive because it is so good. And I feel like he's very confident in the way he shows. He doesn't feel the need to shock. He doesn't feel the need to put a million different ideas out there. It's incredibly edited and incredibly tight, while being sort of the same look frequently. What are you thinking, Dal?
I like the colours. I like that shape. I guess it's kind of just picking up on what you just said about that sort of repeat of the shapes, and you thinking that you've seen something before, but you probably have, but you kind of want to. I guess what he's doing is that thing of us saying we want to look at it again. He's letting us do that in the run through. You almost are looking at things again.
What do we think of this look? That surprises me. It seems to be that's an incredibly commercial look, isn't it? But I'm surprised to see sort of a slogan. Has he ever done a slogan before? I don't think so. Like he's done his own version of a slogan, like a huge monkey print.
Yeah, he's been very graphic.
It's obvious that there's I feel like there's obviously someone else now advising him on what's going on, and as we know, the sweatshirt, the luxury sweatshirt, is such a thing that yeah, you're right. It doesn't look immediately Christopher Kane, but I guess there's someone.
That picture, I would say that was Henry Holland.
I guess someone who's invested in him is like, do a sweatshirt. You know, it might be as simplistic as that, which takes some of the magic out of fashion having to say that. But I think that's
because that look feels incredibly familiar. You know, that longer length skirt with an oversized sweater. We've seen that everywhere. You know, that was on all the New York runways. It does feel like a kind of a cookie cutter trend look, isn't it?
It's like his menswear as well. It's just not very convincing. It's like someone said, listen, do a menswear collection. We can think about developing it and making it as good as your women's later, but start the ball rolling now. So I think these little things are probably clues that, you know, because he's going bloody shop. He's got to fill it. It's as simple as that, actually. You know, you can't just put all of these really nice dresses with huge Swarovski crystals in it. You've got to have a whole range. And I guess this collection, which will probably be the one that's going to maybe open the shop, needs to hit a lot of notes.
What do you think of seeing that sweater too? Do you find that a bit depressing? I agree with everything Dal says, but that makes my heart weep a little bit to see a sweater that says flower.
Yeah, it just doesn't say much, does it?
I'm more interested in the shoes, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
The shoes look, that's what.
Yeah, we'll have to go to some shoes.
I'm hopeful that's not all that it seems on this look. Maybe we'll see it in person, or we'll see closer up and it's something fabulous. Maybe something at the back.
Maybe an interesting detail. A statement bag.
Yeah, I live in hope.
That feels very signature Christopher Kane, though. This really reminds me of it's the best collection in the world, that Phoebe Philo Chloe collection, you know, that next look. I love that. Anything that resembles that makes me really happy.
Good old days.
We're back to the season now as well. This feels very spring.
Yeah, this feels a lot more spring.
Oh, that's lovely.
And I like that it's kind of it's very different from what we saw with that Frankenstein collection, but even that kind of the interesting fastenings, you know, the bolt-ons, I like that he'll keep a thread going, you know, even though he... Steve, what's your take? You've been remarkably quiet.
I'm just taking it in. He's one of those designers that really does kind of captivate my kind of attention and just draws me in, because I always think there is something more than just the first image. But I love the first looks actually. I love the repetition of the leaf print, the leaf cutout. Sorry, because he was just playing with the same idea, but just by moving it slightly, it changes the complete look, and it's sort of a tease throughout. But I'm loving the sheerness. But I mean, we've seen it so much throughout the collections, like the use of translucency and sheer fabrics.
It seems to be a very techie season as a whole. If you look at what Jonathan did, you know, loads of pleats, loads of like fold it. I know that's always been something that Jonathan's done, but if you look at this, if you looked at what Mary did with, you know, everything, you had air text, you had Lesage embroidery, you had sheer panels, you had print. It does seem to be like everyone's kind of, maybe it's because digital prints died, everyone's like, shit, we have to up our game a little bit. But it seemed to be a very techie season, like, you know, just a nice printed dress isn't enough.
I think it's making the trends-based like journalism quite simple. But this season, you can easily summarise it in clear, distinct brackets.
I think also in terms of, because there are so many outlets, press or media outlets now, that designers kind of almost have to, or those ones that do get the most press are the ones that are pushing buttons in lots of other fields. So someone like Iris van Herpen that we talked about before, she gets interviewed by Mashable, she gets interviewed by these scientists and everyone because of what she does, not just fashion people. And you know, you're starting to see, like, the fact that they talk about fashion on something like Mashable now, I think gives us an idea that actually the designers that are using technology in a basic way, the ones that have collaborated with artists as well, you get all the art people interested, you get a whole new group of people that normally would have just sort of not even looked at your show. So, and employing those technologies, I think it's really important from a production point of view, but it also kind of makes you, it's more newsworthy, isn't it?
Do you think it's part of that whole culture of being fashion made for the exhibition rather than fashion made for the shopper or for the body? It's this kind of idea that fashion designers want to be doing something that isn't just about selling clothes. You know, Mary's very good at that, producing these incredible showpieces that are shown in an exhibition context. And I wonder if this has come from that, you know, the idea of something more. Like Iris, again, she's very, very key to that kind of movement. I wonder how much that's kind of influencing the way designers work. They want to create something, that is for...
They'll know they'll have an exhibition in 30 years.
Exactly, or it's for an exhibition, or it's for a newspaper article. You know, Mary does a lot of, she'll work with, she worked with an artist who turned some of her prints into this kind of amazing 3D animation. She's worked with sound artists. She's done, feels like designers are looking beyond just selling clothes. It's quite an exciting sort of step forward. I wonder that with this collection with Christopher Kane. What do we think of the palette? Because Dal, you mentioned it at the start, and it's kind of, I love that he does something that's always kind of sickly, you know, that green, but it's kind of wrong, but I hate that phrase, wrong but right. But you know what I'm getting at. What's our take on the palette?
Well, they are those ugly colours, but they're kind of beautifully put together. So they kind of have a mind. They kind of take on a whole new thing.
Everything he does looks like it was something your granny wore, kind of done better. That's what I love about his stuff. These look amazing. I want to see that on clothes. Have we seen any trousers at all? No, it's all been dresses.
There was a suit.
Well, the first look was a suit, but other than that, it's just been dresses. That's weird.
I don't like that. I'm not sure, I don't like that.
Is that laser cut? I think so. Yeah, that's weird. Oh,
see, there we go again.
that makes me so unhappy.
It really does look like a House of Holland look, doesn't it?
That really does. And it's like, it just feels like the most simplistic way. Like I love that Christopher Kane does these amazing flowers. You know, we all know that's one of his codes, and it's like it's just being ripped apart, like petal, flower.
It's quite literal.
It's what we see in New York, that kind of like thing where the audience, the consumer has to be kind of like led into these things, and they can't be. There's no surprises there.
It's like Mary Catanzi doing like a sweater that says digital print on the front. It would just be really upsetting.
Just arrows and annotations all around all the clothes.
Jonathan Anderson, androgyny. Oh dear.
There is a real lightness to Christopher's clothes, though. Actually, looking at this again, the themes are heavy and the plique and all of that stuff. But actually, I feel like if you were wearing one, you would still see the woman in the clothes.
Yeah.
Which is something like, for example, like my issue with Lanvin is that every time you look at a woman wearing a Lanvin dress, you see the dress and then you see her.
Yeah.
And then you say, oh, you look nice in that dress.
There is a heaviness to it.
You don't notice the woman first. And with this, I feel like it all sort of works together, even though it looks like it would be really heavy, but actually I'm equally looking at the girls that are wearing them as much as the clothes, which is kind of obviously really difficult to pull off with this sort of...
With something so sort of, like he's done the cutouts, he's done this kind of lifting people, as you say, it's very
quite revealing on the last look. The laser cut there is quite an intimate cut. It's quite racy.
But it's racy in a very British way, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very kind of peephole.
Yeah.
It's quite fetishistic.
Yeah, Victorian.
That's lovely. Oh God, why the statement sweaters?
You've got to think about the sweaters.
I'm like, yes, a nice sweater. Yeah. I'm just kind of sick of it. I think it's after watching London.
Are they going to be like on
Net-a-Porter
Net-a-Porter like now or something?
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering.
They look a bit...
Yeah, it feels like I could understand them being in there.
Click to buy.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't you love that though, Steve? Isn't that what you're all about?
Click to buy, yeah.
Click to buy. Do you like that?
No, not particularly.
Do you? Have you ever like that whole thing of clicking to buy?
I like it. I'll wave a flag for it. I think it's really important. I think the whole way fashion shows is ridiculous. The fact that people always write about this, a really tired argument. But, you can't buy a coat in winter. You can't buy this and that. Everyone sees collections now. By everyone, I mean shoppers, and they can't get it. And then, like Zara will have done this in 3 weeks' time. Like, so it's kind of
Petal.
Yeah, it seems completely ridiculous, and I kind of feel like designers need to catch up with themselves.
I remember Natalie Massenet talking about it, and she was saying that when they first started the sort of click to buy, that it was her and Christopher that kind of wanted to kind of make that a statement, so you are available to kind of have the pieces straight away. And I do think, to be honest, you do have a good point to make. And you don't necessarily want to have to wait for the pieces to come out, because you are getting people copying your ideas
really
and stuff very well, very quickly, and it's
I also think, why are you throwing your money into live streaming and getting as many people as possible to watch your show?
You can't have it,
if they can't have it. And I think that's what Topshop did, a really interesting thing by letting people like looks as they came down the catwalk, because I was like, okay, I see the point in you live streaming. You're basically getting your shoppers to do your buy for you, like clever. But other brands that just do an incredible live stream and then people can't buy it, it just feels really... But I do think click to buy in its current guise is pretty awful.
I think you have to do it, and it has to be the full collection. It can't be like light versions, like a t-shirt. I've seen that in menswear quite a lot, just a t-shirt, a simple t-shirt that doesn't really fit in with the rest of the collection. Or like now, if we're seeing these sweaters that look a bit jarring to our eye, I think it has to be the collection. But ultimately, I think, with the digital age and everyone is so impatient, I think almost we need to kind of make people a little bit, try and coax them into being more patient.
I don't think it's about patience with fashion. I think it's about we're showing in a system that makes no sense. The seasons, as we've all said, don't make any sense. 4 cities doesn't really make any sense. Not being able to get stuff when it's seasonally appropriate to wear it doesn't make any sense. I think I agree with you about the patience thing. I don't think anyone wants to fuel this kind of hamster wheel, to go back to what we were talking about at the start. But I think there's got to be an element where fashion needs to make sense. And I don't think... Well, do you think it makes sense at the moment?
What, the distribution delivery of it?
The distribution delivery, the way we show fashion.
No. I mean, it would if we stopped, live streaming and we kind of went back. Which just is ridiculous, because that's not how things evolve. So,
because it's not a trade show anymore; it's a publicity event. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Unless you're a designer like, like The Row or Tom Ford, where it is really constant. And everything kind of looks like it could be from any season, and it's this bigger world that you're just dipping clothes into every now and then. Then it sort of works, because you've kind of got longer to... You respect those clothes more because they're more expensive, they're more luxurious, they've taken longer for you to acquire, but your general hashtag London Fashion Week or whatever consumer, should be able to buy these things now. And there would be some, I guess there'd be more, the sales would go up. I think a lot of people think, people can't afford these clothes, so they buy them straight away. I think probably they would. Especially that you've got longer, now designers, customers have longer to think about purchases. So actually, if they like that now and they just bought it, they'd, whoops, I've just spent £2 grand.
I think high fashion has lost that kind of yeah, I want it, I'm going to buy it now, because as you say, everyone's seen it and they're tired of it. I think that's part of the problem. Like, they get that, I want that now, I'm going to buy it when they're in Zara now, or when they're in... But
and also I think people are so, it used to just be like the fashion industry that we were so savvy to the sales seasons, and you'd go and look at a rail in Selfridges and you'd be like, well, that's the showpiece, that will be in the sale, I won't buy it now. Why bother buying it now?
Yeah.
But now everyone kind of knows that stuff, because we're all live streaming and we're all kind of talking about it so openly that we're giving away all of these secrets, and you know, along with that, the mystery, and along with that, those tools that we used to kind of arm ourselves
all
with.
the middlemen have gone, haven't they? I think that the point where Topshop got their shoppers to do that thing, that was the point where you're like, okay, well, the buyer's now obsolete as well as the journalists, so let's all go home and cry. Let's go back to the collection a little bit. What's our take so far? So we've all agreed those sweaters, well, I don't even care if we've all agreed, I think those sweaters were kind of jarring. But what are the standout pieces from this? What do you think is going to be the look that goes everywhere? Like, for me, it's not going to be that opening look. I don't think it'll be the suit. I think maybe some of those cut-out pieces. What have been the pieces that stood out for you, Tui?
I think the cut-out pieces, the paisley sort of teardrop type of things, I really like them. I think all his dresses, the sort of shorter versions, I quite like them. I'm not too keen on this sort of pleated stuff, but you know, the more sort of sexy silhouette he did, sort of in the middle bit, was quite nice.
I think the most kind of editorial worthy pieces that we've seen so far are the sort of the chemical blotches with the
iridescent
with
kind
the
of
iridescent, with the feathery, and it also looked like it had like a crystallized sort of neck, and it would be really nice if it did. It'd be a shame if it didn't, but it'd be really nice if it did, because obviously his collaboration with Swarovski, and I think for me, those and the sort of lace at the beginning were probably my favourites so far. I don't think I like the cutouts. It kind of reminds me of was it Holly Fulton that did the cutouts, or was it someone else? Oh, I can't remember. But for me, it's definitely the chemical blotches iridescent thing.
We've not seen enough of that. We've limited to like 3 looks so far.
Yeah, it was only 3.
But he does
we
do
were
that,
assaulted
though.
with like a number of the leaf cutouts.
He does do that with certain elements, like he leaves you wanting more. Like.
But I think those leaf cuts, they're going to become the iconic look from this collection. I can imagine, you know, you'll see that on all the girls outside the shows, and then maybe, as you say, those iridescent stuff will be shot a lot more. Yeah, I know, I'm trying to not focus
No,
on
but
that.
you'll see these sweatshirts in next season. They'll be all over like Tommy Tom's photography.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's a savvy collection commercially, because that's, you know, his younger shopper, this is his older shopper. That look we saw before with the really long skirt with that kind of like beigey jacket is...
But for me, they're too cutesy for Christopher Kane. They don't feel...
It feels House of Holland.
They don't feel intelligent enough.
We go to the sweater.
They don't feel
But does
intelligent
that mean House of Holland has improved?
I think it has.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has, for sure.
So that's more of a compliment for him rather than a sort of bad thing for Chris.
And also see these looks all on the high street copied as well.
I don't think House of Holland is bad. I think House of Holland serves a particular job.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Henry's an incredible businessman and fashion personality. I think House of Holland, it's very great design for what it is, but it's not what Christopher Kane does.
No. But yeah, he definitely has grown up in the last few seasons.
Yeah,
I think sitting there yesterday, I really think he had grown up.
Now this feels like you know, we've got that sweater for his younger shopper, we've got this for his older. It does feel commercial in that sense of, you know, it's like ticking boxes for all markets covered. Yeah. But this to me feels so much more interesting. This.
Yeah, I want to see the shoes more. They look lovely.
The shoes look really gorgeous, don't they?
Oh my god! At least that one's a bit more.
That one's nice though. Yeah.
This gets me wondering though about, and it's ironic to see it on Christopher Kane, given that we've all talked about how he's really rejected digital, about how much Instagram has changed the way fashion designers work. We've talked about this on a couple of panels, because I think that whole statement sweater thing has come from Instagram, because you can't see cut or fit on Instagram. You can just see slogans and colour, and you know, why do you need a perfectly tailored jacket? It doesn't show off. You know, the whole kind of street style fashion, it's just fed this really simplistic style of clothes that is a t-shirt with a slogan or a sweater with a slogan.
But when the BFC are emailing designers telling them to have an Instagrammable thing at their show venue, that's where it's coming from. Not them, you know, maybe other people too, but that is a fact. That has happened. Think of having something that people can Instagram at your show space, rather than just having really nice clothes. So it's that culture that there are too many people influencing designers to do things that have those sorts of results. And now, I mean, I know, like, I think if you've got a lot of followers on Instagram, a PR is just really happy if you Instagram a picture of a top at a press day, as they would be if you did a page
I know you get emails
in a magazine.
Yes,
yeah, exactly. Or will you tweet this? And it's kind of a bit like, well, at what point do you start saying, well, yes, but give it to me or pay me or something, you know, because it's kind of it's getting really difficult now. And I think that another thing why it's interesting that Christopher Kane is still, well, we're still paying attention to him without all of those things, is because Instagram and all of those social networks that designers use has taken, it's kind of overlaps with what our jobs are. And so it gets a little bit weird when they're talking about themselves so much, then what do we have left to talk about? So, and he hasn't done that. So it means that the only people talking about him.
That's a really good point, because if there is a Christopher Kane interview or Christopher Kane feature, you want it, you're thirsty for it, you read it, whereas an interview with, Christopher Shannon, you're kind of like, well, I love Christopher, I know what his personality is, I see his amusing tweets every day. It doesn't feel like you'll give, the role of the journalist is kind of removed. God, this is a depressing panel. It's like we should all go home and resign and find a new trade.
Make sweatshirts.
Yeah, make sweatshirts.
Flower and petal.
I'm still waiting for that.
Are they flowers or spiders or something? What else?
I think it's like crystal embellishment. If you go back to the sorry Neil to keep making you jump around. If you go back to this, it looks like it's kind of embellishment style, you know, almost like it's emulating little brooches. Do you know what I mean? Kind of.
It's nice.
Yeah, I like that. And that feels very British to me. That feels very Christopher Kane. It's kind of very feminine and very beautiful, but not in an expected way. These have been my favourite looks, actually. I think this just feels so much subtler and.
Yeah.
I was just about to say we haven't seen any bags. And there we have.
Very crotch-centric, this
collection. It is. I thought it was just me, but no, it is. You
thought it was just you focusing on the crotches, Steve.
That's interesting detail there.
It's a bit, I'm a bit annoyed, it's a bit, okay, flowers, ovaries, vagina, okay, you know, it's not as
subtle as
clever as it could be, as it has been.
Yeah.
I think actually that's a really good summary of this collection, not as clever as it has been before. Like some of the pieces are really beautiful, but it doesn't, there's that twist with Christopher Kane. I don't feel like we've got that kind of, the only thing I saw it in was those kind of flower crystals pulling up the skirt in different, that seemed, but this, you know, the arrows pointing.
And is it that trade-off between sort of the cleverness and commercial? You know, I think that's what we're seeing here.
He's definitely been looking at Henry Holland. Like.
You'll be getting an email from the PR after this.
I think there are pieces in this collection that are absolutely beautiful, but there are, well, yeah, he's definitely, it's a commercial. You can see that influence. I just don't have any words.
Yeah.
I think all his sort of collections, though, you know, translates into commercial, and there's always been a sweatshirt, you know, so even though it's not on the catwalk, but you can always buy a sweatshirt in that print. So I guess he's just brought that to the catwalk now.
I love these.
Yeah, that's cool. I like the skirt with that previous look with the sweater, you know, that actually felt very, that feels very Christopher, you know.
It does, yeah.
I love how flat it looks. It looks like she's gone through like a photocopier or something.
There's a lot going on in this collection. You know, it actually really contradicts what I said at the start about, you know, it's almost some collections he's done have been the same look every single time. There's tons of different trends of this.
It's a large collection as well. We touched on Mary before we started. That was like quite a small collection, quite a tight collection, even though it did kind of look at three distinct kind of themes. Whereas this has multiple looks and multiple themes.
Yeah.
It is a collection for the street style generation, though, isn't it? You know, it's very iconic. Everything from those big cutouts to these big slogans to the.
I think he's considering a lot more consumers. He's considering his political consumer. He's considering, you know, his street style consumer. He's considering his cool girl consumer. You know, like he's really kind of factoring in everyone, and obviously with the massive kind of money push on his business, he can kind of incorporate a lot more, which is why we've seen such a large collection.
I love that actually.
I would have really loved to see him play with another area, you know, because he's kind of, like you said, we've explored the flowers, we've explored his space fascination. I really love that, like his sort of obsession with that. I would have loved to have seen him just go somewhere else, but you know, he does have another 100 years of his career left. He's gonna have time, so I guess it's okay.
Are we looking too much into it because of the Mount Street store announcement just before the show, or are we seeing, or is that an indication of his you know, where he is at the moment, because he is kind of like tweaking his signatures, or you know, confirming his signatures, like, shall I say, and kind of broadening them and applying them to a greater number of things within one show. You know, this could be him. This is Christopher Kane now, kind of thing. I think that's what it is.
I think there's a confidence to it. He's saying that I'm a big brand, and I think this morning we had Mount Street announcement, as you say. You know, that's very deliberate that he announced that the morning of his show, and I think if anything that was a precursor to the show. He's saying, yeah, I'm a brand now. I'm about commerciality. I'm about selling stuff, and this show, I think if he hadn't made that announcement, people probably would have been a lot more critical of the sweaters. But with that announcement, it almost legitimises it, doesn't it? It's almost an explanation.
Yeah.
Is that the last look?
Is that the last look? Yeah, that's the closing look.
Yeah.
I quite like the slogans when it's in a more interesting guise. I don't know, what would have been your...
When it feels more Christopher Kane, whereas the sweaters don't. I mean, I know he does them, but I don't think we necessarily need to see them. Going to that point, I don't think they have to show your sweater. It's not a Kenzo show. We don't have to see the sweater, I don't think. Be much more interested to see this, and then, you know, a younger consumer can buy the sweater when it actually hits the stores. Yeah, the sweatshirts aren't exciting, but I think there is enough excitement there that we can pick through.
Is this a strong collection? Because it's definitely strong in terms of him saying, I'm Christopher Kane, I'm a brand. Is it strong in terms of fashion and technique? And what's your take too?
I think so. I think there's a lot going on. I think, you know, there's the sort of commercial side of it, but then I also think there's a lot of, you know, other sort of arrowing type of things. I think there's interesting techniques that you can sort of, you know, look into. So yeah, I think it's a strong collection.
How about you, Dal? What's your take?
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, it touches on all of the techniques, and it pushes things forward. It makes us think. We're all going to look at it again tonight and think about it probably really differently and be like, shit, I really want one of those. We're going to see you in one, ordering one or whatever. But I think also, I just want to go back to something you were saying about he's obviously thinking about new customers and a different people that might wear his brand. I don't think he necessarily is a designer. There are some designers that like that. I don't think Christopher is one of them. You know, I think he is quite a sensitive designer in that traditional sense. And I think actually, if we look at, you know, you mentioned where his studio is in Dalston. Dalston's really different now to what it used to be when he was there as a student or whenever, you know. So I think he's just moving along with his generation, and his generation, or we all as a generation, are so much more rich in terms of culture, and we're just much more bourgeois these days. You know, we all like nice furniture, and we all want, you know, independent coffee. We don't want to all that nonsense or that Tumblr stuff that we all kind of might, or me personally, I always struggle with, because I hate being so obvious. But yeah, you know what, if there's a Starbucks next to an independent one, guess where I'm going. That whole thing has happened to Dalston, and he's just part of that wave of people. So you come out of his studio, you can buy a Rick Owens leather jacket, you know, and that has an effect on how you think about how people are wearing clothes. And people in Dalston will wear these clothes. People that he knows, young people, will wear these clothes. So I think that's more, it's just more of it as a generation has changed in the way we all think about fashion. And I just love the fact that he's kind of presenting that realization, or that evolution has happened without him Instagramming pictures of his mood boards. I think that's what I love about it, is that it's kind of old school design. It's the sort of stuff that I looked at when I was a kid, that made me want to do what I'm doing today. And I think, I'd hope that there are people looking at Christopher Kane shows now that will be sitting here in 10, 15 years. And that's why I love it.
That's a really lovely note to end on. That's really, I wanted to ask you what you thought, Cobbie, but I think we're just going to have to stop.
That's a nice way to end.
Because it was a really lovely, really
great summary.
Really great summary.
Nice conclusion.
Yeah, so thank you so much, guys. And I think I think it's an incredibly strong collection. I'm really excited to see Christopher Kane blossom.
Yeah.
There we go. What a
Had to get the last word.
Tune into
That's the next sweater.
Tune into Bangkok now to to see our very own new Stoppard live stream.
Hog.
Thank you so much, guys.